Hello and welcome. This is a presentation for the Course 3 final assignment, which is about the human factors in AI as part of the AI for Product Management Specialization from Duke University. And I'm Rav. This presentation has been done in October 2024. So the goals for the Course 3 final assignment was to design the user experience aspects of the AI product with focus on the key AI specific considerations in terms of the UI user interface design, input outputs, transparency, as well as the AI privacy and the ethics in the AI, communicating the uncertainty and the feedback loops to evaluate the privacy and ethical implication of such an AI product and to describe ensuring the privacy of the user data and what would be the applicable laws into the AI product, which I would choose to consider to do a end-to-end product development projection of such a project. So the things that I would have to consider for the assignment is about the task analysis, the user experience design, the privacy considerations, and the ethical considerations. Describing the problem and then how I go about the different task analysis of the problem and the model that would be as part of the AI product, as well as to describe about the user experience design that I would consider about such an AI product, which will have a human user interaction. And then what would be the privacy considerations that would be applicable for the product, and what would be the ethical considerations, and how I go about that. So my selected the product for is basically from the course 2, which is an AI app that predicts student exam score based on student study habits. Um, there was a video about the course 2 describing about the complete that particular project and in terms of how that gets developed, which is part of the course 2. And as part of the course 3, it's an extension of the same product development, along with imbibing it from a human factors that are involved in a AI product development. So essentially, the human factors that would involve in the AI product development and how it relates to this product that I've chosen to consider. Essentially, the user experience. This AI product app provides a personalized, actionable feedback on the study habits, empowering students to optimize their academic efforts confidently. So that relates to the human user experience, and thus a user-centered design becomes very primary to consider. And we also need to ensure that all student data is encrypted, anonymized, and handled with strict compliance to the privacy laws of FERPA and the GDPR as applicable in such a product being used and catered to the US population where the FERPA will be applicable, as well as the European population where the GDPR privacy laws will be applicable. The machine learning model designed must be fair and it have an accountability, and there should be irregularly audited to mitigate any biases and promote equitable learning outcomes for all students. So that relates to the ethics aspects that needs to go into building the AI product. And by being responsible, supporting to students' academic journey, this AI product app promotes positive educational impact, motivation, and accessible guidance for diverse learning needs. So that relates to the human and societal considerations, which becomes, again, the primary aspect to take into account in developing such a product. So taking the approach and going through the different stages of inculcating the human factors into the AI product development, the task analysis part, where if I were to describe the problem description, the students often struggle to gauge how much study time will result in desired academic performance. So the AI app aims to fill the gap by predicting the exam scores based on the study habits. So that's the problem definition and the problem description for which the AI product is going to help cater to. So what are the key tasks or the primary tasks that it would involve from a user looking at it from a user experience to such an app point of view would be the users providing the input of their study hours and related academic habits to receive a predicted score along with the study recommendations. And that's the primary task and the primary user interactions we would see for such a AI product or such an AI app. How would I think about what happens after a user provides their input? So the app will feature a streamlined, intuitive data entry screen, which is essential because that would be prima facie for the user's interaction. And that lets the students to quickly input the key study factors such as their study hours, previous scores, their optional habits like sleep and exercise pattern, and other factors which would let the student provide that as an input. By simplifying those initial setup, we'll also be looking at how the students experience a smooth onboarding with all relevant data easily accessible for personalized insights, as well as by taking into some of the previous scores and the habits that would also help towards the cold start in terms of the model where the previous inputs for a specific user or a student would not be available. So improving the user experience, the app presents students with instant predictions and visual feedback on their study habits. That allows in user engagement. For it's not taking. There is an immediate feedback in terms of visual predictions and with the instant predictions and the feedback that would allow a user engagement to key in or provide the relevant data from their point of view and identifying the potential gaps and offering clear and actionable tips for improvement along the way with thoughtfully designed a dashboard that would ensure the students can understand their progress at a glance and they don't have to wait for some event to occur to know the score, but then they could actually be looking at a ongoing journey as part of their learning or their academic progress. So that would make both effective and enjoyable to use. So those will be the aspects to consider from a user design point of view in terms of making it more human centric from a user engagement um, uh, point of view. So recapping that from more from a how this will happen as part of a design of such an AI product is the students will interact with the app by providing their study hours, viewing predictions, and adjusting their study habits based on the provided feedback, which the app will provide. So the user experience considerations, the way user inputs and the feedback loops are very essential. The app must allow taking inputs that include the study hours in the previous course, and they could update the actual scores after the exam to refine any future predictions. The transparency on the model is also very essential. The app must display a clear explanation of how study hours and other inputs influence the predictions, such as through visual indicators showing whether any factor which a user will input will have a high impact or low impact factors. Also, it is very essential to communicate the uncertainty of the models, the machine learning model that would be used in the AI product, where the expected score is not provided as an absolute score of what the prediction is going to be, but rather it's provided with a set of a confidence interval as applicable in our case. It would be if we are predicting a student's score based on the input that they provided, instead of having an absolute score, we would provide a score with plus or minus certain points to convey the expected range, and that would make the reliability of the prediction to be something where the users can engage onto rather than the app providing an absolute score and the user disengaging, not seeing that exact absolute score. So, what are the privacy considerations for such a product in such a product development? The privacy concern that involves here are collecting the student study habits and the exam scores, this would require a strict data protection to ensure that the sensitive academic data isn't misused or exposed. So the applicable privacy laws in the US, it's going to be the FERPA, which protects the student education data requiring clear consent for data collection and usage. And for the EU, it's the GDPR, which mandates the data minimization, the user content, and its access, as well as a very clear guidelines in terms of a deletion of the data that's collected, and as well as allowing the user to be able to delete their provided data that the app collects, and the user will have having a full control of deleting it whenever they want to delete it. So the obligations for the compliance, which the app should meet, and we will, such a product will meet or need to consider to meet at least, not limited to this, but then these are the essential obligations to meet would be the data encryption. All the collected data will be encrypted both in transit and at rest. At the time of collecting, the data is collected in a secure way, as well as once it is collected, it is encrypted. And when the data is used for any of the model's learning abilities, the data is in an encrypted way. So data minimization, only essential study habit information is collected, and all data is anonymized where possible, where there is no need to relate the data with the user or a student. All of those would be anonymized, and that way providing a data minimization aspect. It also involves not collecting things that is not relevant or not needed, and only collecting what is needed and making it explicit to the user about what are the data that is being collected and why that is being collected. An explicit consent to the students or their guardians must, the app must provide as part of as seeking consent to collect the data and use the data for academic insights. The final aspect, which is about the ethical considerations that needs to go in such a AI product development, would be identifying the potential sources of bias. And we can see in here, in such an app, there could be an historical bias where the training data reflects only a high performing students. It could skew the predictions for an average or low performing students. So that's an historical bias which need to take into account, the models need to take into account about such bias as a possibility. And there's a clear feedback bias where the students who receive the lower predicted scores might disengage. So this would lead into a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the app is, with less number of students disengaging, that would result in the available inputs or that the app would collect, and then further it will skew in terms of the prediction that would happen across for all the other students as well. So the potential for the feedback bias and to mitigate that should be a primary concern. Even when such a product goes into the deployment, need to be mindful about the possible feedback bias that can happen and take into account by having a regular audit, having a retraining the models, and making sure the model prediction algorithms take into account of mitigating any of these biases. The ethical AI principles, the fairness aspect of this is having a regular audit, which should be considered conducted to ensure the predictions are unbiased across the demographics and the backgrounds. That needs to be in place. The accountability that the app owners would um, the will assume the full responsibility for the accuracy of the predictions and regularly monitor the model's impact on the student outcomes, as well as the transparency. The students will have access to explanations of what those predictions are, allowing them to understand so that they can trust the results. And also the predictions would be with the confidence interval rather than being an absolute predictions. So those are the things to consider as by default into going into developing a product, something like the product that I've chosen. So that pretty much ends this presentation, where I wanted to cover the human factors that would be involved in AI product development for the specific chosen product that I've picked up. Thank you.